Welcome to the Monday Morning Mixtape, a podcast about all the music that you love and some of the music that you probably don't really know. On this week's show, we're going to be doing a deep dive into The Who's first album, My Generation. And we're going to be giving a little bit of the history of The Who as well. So stay tuned.
So this week I picked The Who.
The Who for us to review a classic album, which we'll get into that in the next segment, but we're going to have a look more of The Who, just their history, isn't it now?
Yeah, just a little bit. So basically they're an English rock band. And they were formed in the early 1960s, 1964, I think. And they were considered one of the most influential rock bands of the 20th century. And they sold over 100 million records worldwide. So in advance, I would like to apologise. I kind of keep stumbling over my words today, so if I do, just don't mind me.
You're having a little strong. You might need to call Strong Ambulance.
Yeah, I think so. Because I'm going to say Who as little amount of times in this as possible, because I don't seem to be able to pronounce it properly.
Yeah, even talking to me earlier on, you were saying Q or the high.
Hopefully I won't say it too many times anyway. But yeah, I don't know if you knew this, but The Who actually developed from an earlier group called the Detours.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know much about The Who. Like they're a band that like it's kind of like one of those ones that everyone goes, oh, like they're a great band of all time. Yet I've never really listened to them, and it's just one of those ones that I've never really gotten any interest from.
Yeah, for me, it was something that I maybe listened to a few times in the past, in recent years, and, you know, through the podcast, kind of just wanted to, you know, acknowledge them and see kind of how I felt about them now. So just to give you a bit of a kind of history of them in general, the founding members of The Who, there's three of them. Roger Daltrey, I hope I pronounced these properly. As I said, you know, I have a little bit of word vomit today, so I'm sorry. Pete Townsend and John Entwistle. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong.
His first name is actually pronounced John. John Entwistle. He's actually an elf.
They did seem to kind of come from musical backgrounds, especially... who was it again? It was Pete. Yeah, Pete Townsend.
His mother was a saxophone.
No, his father played the saxophone, actually.
No, and his mother was the saxophone. And they made sweet music that night. And Pete Townsend was born.
You are in fine form this evening, aren't you?
I don't know.
But yeah, Townsend and Entwistle became friends in their second year of, I think it was like our version of secondary school, high school, whatever way you want to say it. And they actually formed a trad jazz group, which I find that kind of genre in itself kind of interesting. I haven't even attempted to listen to trad jazz, but it might be something we might come across again in the future. If any of our listeners are interested in it, please do let us know. But yeah, so they became friends, as I said. Entwistle actually played the French horn at first. I don't know if that is something that actually
all elves played the French horn.
I'm not talking about elves now, Mark. We're talking about The Who.
John Entwistle, the elf.
But I don't know if it does kind of show up in their music. It's not something that I'm really accustomed to the sound of, so I don't know.
No, like I would have heard like the classic Who songs, and then this would have been the first. Like, well, as I say, we'll talk about it more later on.
Yeah.
But My Generation would have been the first album I listened to from start to finish, and I didn't hear any real French horns in that, and it's escaping me now if I've heard it in other things.
Yeah.
I doubt it, but maybe.
They seem to kind of evolve by kind of playing professional gigs in the kind of early days, like wedding functions and stuff. And I suppose that's something that a lot of bands do start off doing, isn't it?
Yeah, like a lot, like most, not most, but a lot of bands do start off as just cover bands that are talented enough to get like a couple of gigs, and then, you know, they want to branch out and go a bit further, and then with a bit of luck and a bit of talent and a couple other things, maybe they managed to make it big.
Yeah, they certainly did. When I was kind of looking them up, their early career, by the time the Detours had become the Who, by the way, I think the Who is a much better name, even if I can't pronounce it properly. They had kind of found regular gigs, which was quite cool. In Greenfield and Acton, Leicester Square, just to name a few. So, they had a few kind of regular gigs, which is important if you definitely want to make it.
They hadn't blown up by that point, but they had already switched over from sorry, what was the previous name?
It was the Detours.
Yeah. So at this point they'd already switched over from the Detours to the Who.
Yeah.
And now they're kind of travelling around. They're a middling band at the moment, kind of.
Yeah.
At this moment in their history.
Exactly. It seems like a couple of the actual members kind of turned on each other at one point. It was...
I'm just thinking of that episode of The Simpsons where they had the two monkeys fighting each other. I don't know why that came into my mind. But
probably because you've been watching it lately.
Well, probably.
But it seems like a couple of kind of members came and went over the years. But, that happens with bands anyway. They mentioned in an article that I read that during a gig with a stand-in drummer, the band first met Keith Moon, and he kind of became a major part of the group.
As we all know, Keith Moon is the son of the moon.
What is with you today?
I don't know.
For all our listeners out here, Mark is just in a very playful form today, which hopefully will continue in the rest of the episodes because I'm actually finding it quite interesting and funny. But yeah, so Moon kind of played a few songs with the group and, just having a bit of fun with them, and the Who changed managers a few times as well, as bands kind of tend to do.
Yeah, they were finding their feet at that time.
Yeah, my generation first single in late kind of 1964 was a mix of covers and of their own kind of songs, which was very popular to do back then, as we will kind of discuss further in the next segment. But yeah, they kind of just kept on going in regards to that. They had several singles out. I'm not kind of going to go into too much detail, I suppose, in regards to that.
In regards to actually my generation, one thing I will say about it is it was impressive the turnaround from starting the album to having it released. I believe they started it. I believe it was either March or April, and they had it finished up, I think, by either July or August.
Yeah,
and
it was within like 4 months or something.
And it was out by December that year, and in UK, and then it had its follow-up kind of US release the next summer. So it was quick enough.
Yeah, and then in 1968, I believe, they went on an 18-month tour.
I think that was that was probably their first kind of... Yeah. Well, not their first realization. The first realization was probably when their album just exploded.
Yeah.
But this was probably them at their most kind of wide-eyed, because they've gone from this this band of kind of misfits and kind of middling going around England and whatnot to doing an 18-month tour around the world. At this time they were at most maybe in their mid-20s.
Yeah, must have been mid to late maximum. Probably.
Max. Probably younger even. And I just don't know their names, or not. I know their names. I don't know their ages off the top of my head. But yeah, it's got to be
they did seem to be a little bit kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of demanding, I suppose, in a certain regard when it came to places they were performing once they started to become big. I suppose it happens with a lot of bands and stuff. But when they performed Woodstock, I don't know the exact year off the top of my head. I think it was around the 70s. But they basically demanded $13,000 up front.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which was a little bit... But it didn't happen. They played anyway and they got paid in the end, but they didn't get their upfront money. But the article that I kind of read didn't really specify why they demanded the money. But they did.
Probably just started, as I said, they were young, in their mid-20s, and they've just been flooded with all this fame. It's very difficult for that not to go to your head, and it probably did. Maybe still does. I don't know any of these lads, so they could all be up their own arses for all I know. But I'd say it was a complete like night and day for when they got this fame. Because I wouldn't say like most of them kind of like came from a lot of it, especially if they were kind of striving as musicians. There was probably a lot of lean years before this, so it definitely probably affected them and corrupted them a little bit at the time. Maybe they came back from, maybe they didn't. You may tell us after this.
I'm not 100% sure myself, to be honest, in regards to that, but it does look as if they went through a lot of kind of ups and downs over the years. Throughout my kind of bit of research and stuff, it looks like, like any band, they kind of fell in and out with one another. Especially touring, you're going to be really, really close to each other all the time. It's not going to be easy. But I think that who was it that did the very first solo? I'm just trying to think, who was it? I can't remember. One of the members, anyway, in 1970.
Well, I'd hope so. It'd be one of the members.
Did his very first kind of solo.
He was a homeless man. He came off the street there screaming for a ham sandwich, and then he just wrecked the fucking.
All I remember it was 1971. I can't remember exactly who it was, but one of the members kind of branched out himself, and that was kind of the start of them seeing their own kind of music careers as well as having the band. But they stuck together. They were still together in 1974. They released, they began work on a Tommy film, which a lot of people were talking about, of course, at the time. And that seemed to generate quite a lot of money, 2 million in the first month of release, which is pretty impressive, to be honest. But it took a lot of time to work on it, and they had live performances and all of that. Up until 1974. In 1975, they kind of saw themselves as having more kind of arguments and kind of, what's the best way to put it? It was kind of a bit...
The tension was just building.
Yeah.
It was hitting boiling point, was it?
Daltrey and Townsend were disagreeing about the band's future, which kind of happens with a lot of different bands. Like we saw it happen with Queen. With Freddie Mercury disagreeing with the rest of the band and what direction the band should go, and it does tend to happen, especially when you kind of get big.
And I suppose even if you don't know the Who, you probably like the things you associate when you think back on like quote unquote rock stars or kind of like that, where it's like, oh, they trash this, or they have like they're kind of very bombastic personalities which clash and whatnot. I'd say a lot of those kind of stereotypes, well, not a lot, but some of them at least, come from the Who themselves. Even if you don't know them, like the kind of the ideas and zeitgeist.
They kind of started it in a sense.
Yeah.
Because they did take a year's break. One of the band members wanted to spend time with his family, which is completely like,
Yeah, when you're on the road for more than a year, or even if the next tour wasn't even that long, it's still going to drain you.
Yeah, they didn't do live performances for a good while after that. In 1976, I think, they took their break. They came back together for a short while in 1977. And they did release another album then in 1978, I believe. But from 1978 to 1983, one of the members actually died. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was they still wanted to carry on, which is good. Like I find I've noticed with a lot of bands, I don't know about yourself, but we were kind of briefly talking about Boyzone and stuff. And obviously they broke up a long time before one of their members died. But it does tend to bring friends back together, a death of, a member and stuff. And it certainly did seem to do that for the Who for a short while.
Okay. Fair enough. No, like you see it as well with what was it? The Queen even. Like that'd be the one like you see the most. No, they never really broke up, but they like did go on like long kind of hiatuses and that, but like they kind of came back together after Freddie Mercury died. Now I see why they did it, because at the same time, like the band wasn't just Freddie Mercury, but at the same time, it's when they kept kind of touring and whatnot. I kind of think it's I don't know. I would be kind of look, it's their band, they do whatever they want, but I would have thought like it would have been a very big chunk of it. Like when a band member like that dies, it can bring it together, and you might want to keep.
You're not
the
going to have
alive.
The same sound though.
Exactly, but maybe it's not about us.
True, exactly. They did kind of seem to come and go a lot over the next like 5 to 10 years, but there was in December of 1979 there was a Who concert disaster. Did you know about this?
No.
So there was a crowd crush at a Who gig, and it killed 11 fans.
Oh,